Hello and welcome back to episode 23 of the Shark Source podcast. I'm your host, as always, Danny. And today, for the first time ever, we are not joined by Shaedon. He's having some internet issues, so he will not be here today. We're joined instead by Randy, so our first guest on the show that isn't Shaedon. So how are you doing, Randy?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
All right, so today we've got a great episode for you. We have our predictions for the season. The NHL just today finalized the divisions for the upcoming season, which will start on January 13th. And even though this season's going to be a little different from most, we have only interdivision play, a shortened season, 56 games. We're still very excited, and we've got our predictions for you. So we're going to be doing that. We're also going to do a brief World Junior Championship preview. We're excited for that. That starts on Christmas Day, Team USA taking on Team Russia in a big showdown. We'll let you know who we think is going to win that tournament. We'll also cover the Anthony Duclair signing with the Panthers. One of the most underrated deals of this offseason, but a pretty crazy story of how it happened because I don't think anyone saw a short-term cheap deal like this coming for Duclair. So we'll let you know what we think of that. And then finally, we're going to be going over the retro reverse jerseys. Now, these were announced a few weeks ago, almost at the beginning of the month, I believe, but we haven't had a podcast since they were announced. So we're going to be going over the top three that we liked and maybe one or two that we didn't like for the retro reverse jerseys. And I'll also be explaining a little why they're doing these. So I hope you guys will enjoy this episode, but we're going to get right into it. We're going to start with our predictions. So if you're unaware, the NHL this season is only doing interdivision play due to the COVID pandemic. And one of the reasons they've had to do this is because teams in Canada are not going to be traveling in and out of the U.S. So there's an all-Canadian division, which is called the North Division. So it's going to have all 7 Canadian teams. And then the rest of the 31 teams are divided into those remaining 3 divisions. Top 4 teams from each division make the playoffs. So without further ado, we're going to get into our predictions for the North Division. So Randy, what are your predictions? Who's number 1?
I think I have Toronto going number 1 in the North Division. They've always had such a great lineup. On paper, they always look good, but who knows how they'll do in the playoffs. You think of guys like Johnny Tavares, Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews, of course. They all look just absolutely unbelievable. And I see Toronto going number 1.
Yeah, I also have them 1. We're going to have you go through all your predictions, and then I'll go through all of mine for that division. So right after that, who do you got at number 2?
I actually think I got Vancouver going number 2. They have such a young core coming into this, and I think that they really have a shot at number 2 and making the playoffs this year. Number 3, I think I have McDavid. Or not McDavid,
Basically McDavid.
Edmonton. You think of like guys like McDavid, Draisaitl, obviously. That too, I think, can carry them to the playoffs. And then I think my last one going to the playoffs is Winnipeg, number 4. And then obviously Montreal and Ottawa out of the playoffs.
What about Calgary? Are they ahead of Montreal or Ottawa?
No, I have Calgary probably going last.
Okay.
Ottawa going number 6.
Okay, so seeing some improvement for Ottawa. They definitely made a lot of moves this offseason, so we'll see if that happens. My predictions are pretty similar. We have the same 4 in the playoffs, but in a different order. So first I have Toronto for the similar reasons you said, but also they did bring in some additions because in that playoff series with Columbus, you see that what did they lack? They had way more talent than Columbus, but they lacked grit. And so they definitely addressed that need this offseason, bringing in Wayne Simmons, bringing in experienced Joe Thornton, gritty Zach Bogosian, who won the Cup with Tampa last year. Even Scott Sabourin signed a minor league deal with the Marlies. And if you guys don't remember, Scott Sabourin was the guy who Austin Matthews chirped in that preseason game, ended up scoring against him in his first NHL game. So pretty interesting. Now Scott Sabourin comes home to his birthplace to play for the Leafs. So again, I don't see how the Leafs don't finish first in the division. Now, I've always been skeptical of the Leafs. I know a lot of people overrate them, and I personally can see why people might be doubtful of them this year, but I think they're going to get it done in the regular season in that All-Canadian division and finish first. Second, I have Winnipeg. I know some people have Winnipeg not even making the playoffs, and a lot of people don't have them this high, but I really trust Winnipeg is going to turn it around. I love their coach, Paul Maurice. I love that they brought in Paul Stastny and Cody Eakin this offseason. I think those are two excellent additions. And Connor Hellebuck, I think he's the best goalie in the NHL right now. And I think he will, continue to carry them. And watch for Patrick Laine. I mean, again, he's been one of the most inconsistent players. I mean, at one point we thought he was an elite goal scorer comparable to Ovechkin. And then sometimes we look at him and we don't even know what he's doing. Was he even worth the second overall pick? But I think he's going to have a big year this season, and that's why I have the Jets at number 2. Number 3, I have the McDavids or the Oilers. I think the Edmonton Oilers are going to be hurting after they were absolutely humiliated on home ice last season by the Hawks. And McDavid, Draisaitl, they're out for revenge. Draisaitl won the Hart, but they don't want the Hart. They want the Cup. I think the only reason that they're not higher is because they failed to address the goaltending situation this offseason. I really wanted them to bring in Markstrom. I thought they totally failed in that regard. Fourth place, barely making the playoffs ahead of Calgary, I have Vancouver. I really didn't like that they lost Markstrom. I know they didn't really have a choice because they had to lose him in order to sign their other players. But as good as Demko played in the playoffs, I don't think he's as good as Markstrom. And I certainly don't think Holtby is as good as Markstrom. I think Holtby, that could be one of the worst signings this offseason. He has really regressed. But Vancouver has so much young talent. I do think they're going to squeak in at 4. Just missing the playoffs, so I got Calgary at number 5. I love the addition of Markstrom in the offseason, but I just think, I don't know, Johnny Gaudreau has to step it up, because at one point people were saying he's the best American player in the NHL, better than Matthews, better than Kane, and he's really has to play at an elite level. And more than that, I just don't think they're quite good enough to get ahead of Vancouver. Second last, we got Montreal. I don't know what they're doing. It looks like they're buying. I mean, they're trading assets for players, like they brought in Jake Allen, but it doesn't seem like, I don't think they're good enough to contend, even though they did upset Pittsburgh in the qualifying round. So I have them at second last. And Ottawa I have finishing dead last. Even though they did improve this offseason, I think this division is just too tough for them to get out of the basement. So that's why I have Ottawa finishing last in the Canadian division. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the East Division. I think this is going to be one of the most exciting divisions in hockey. So, Randy, what are your predictions for the East Division?
Yeah, number 1, I think I have Washington going first. Ovechkin and Kuznetsov really been going off recently. They've always been a very good duo in the NHL, so I think I have Washington going at 1. Number 2, I think I have Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, Malkin. You think of guys Malkin, Crosby, and they have a lot of good depth. They're going to be a really good depth team, so I think I have them at number 2. Number 3, I have Boston. They've always had a good scoring. If you think to Pasternak, you think of good depth with defense. Even having Bergeron as a former Selke winner, those things always come to my mind. And then I'm gonna say at number 4, making the playoffs, I think I have Buffalo over Philly. They've really they're looking really good right now, especially with that new Hall signing. That's a big thing. They really needed some scoring, so I think that's going to really put them over the edge. I think that they could make the playoffs. And then at my number 5 spot, I have Philly, obviously just missing the playoffs. It's a really big toss up for me. It could go either way with Buffalo or Philly, but I think I'm going to choose Buffalo as making the playoffs. Philly's just out of it. Number 5, the Rangers. Sadly, Lundqvist is gone, and obviously gone for the game too. So that was really sad for them. But getting Lafreniere might be something that they could look forward to. At number 6, I have New Jersey. and at number 7 I have the Islanders.
Wow, so Islanders in last place in the division. That this is where we're definitely disagreeing. So in first place, I have Boston. I think no one can deny that they're good, and they had a very disappointing playoffs where they went out in 5 to Tampa. But it is notable Rask was not there, and I was really impressed at how easily they dispatched of Carolina, who a lot of people after their qualifying round victory over New York thought that Carolina was cup contenders. So I was really impressed by that. I think Boston will be out for revenge this year, and I think they're going to have a great season. I have them winning the East by a pretty considerable margin. In second place, I have the New York Islanders. I think Barry Trotz is arguably the best or second best coach in the league. I think John Tortorella is right up there with him, but the way that team has bought in to his system, they've lost Tavares, and they have clearly showed that they have come out on the better end of that signing than the Leafs. They've made it to the conference semifinals and then the conference finals in consecutive years after losing him. I think Barzal's going to have another great season, and I think he has another level in his offensive game that he just hasn't quite reached yet. And now next up we have Washington. I think Washington could have been maybe ahead of New York Islanders if it was not for the loss of Lundqvist. I really like that they brought in Lundqvist this offseason because I'm not sold on Ilya Samsonov, and I thought bringing in Lundqvist would have been huge for them, but I don't. I think now that he's unfortunately out for the season with a heart condition, that Washington is going to finish third. Another thing that concerned me is there were reports out of the bubble in Toronto that Washington was not taking it seriously. They were having parties every night, and that's why the Islanders really dispatched them easily in that playoff series. So I'm a little concerned about Washington, but I have them just ahead of Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh is a team where I have them finishing fourth, but if they won the division, I wouldn't be too surprised because I know they're going to be out for revenge after last season. I just don't know if I trust Tristan Jarry. He had a really good season last year, but they got rid of Matt Murray pretty quickly, and they got rid of Hornquist. I think GM Jim Rutherford is panicking a little bit, and he might be making a few mistakes. They did get rid of Jack Johnson, who most people or many people would call the worst defenseman in the NHL. So that is good, but they had to buy him out. So Pittsburgh got finishing fourth, just making the playoffs. Just missing the playoffs, I had Philadelphia. So we both had Philly in that spot. And look, we're not saying Philadelphia is a bad team, but I just think they overperformed a little last year. They're losing Matt Niskanen to retirement. I think Carter Hart will continue to be a great goalie, and they're going to have Lindblom back for the full season, but I just don't see him ahead of Pittsburgh. And then in sixth place, I have Buffalo, and I love what they did bringing in Taylor Hall. I think that was an excellent move, and it hopefully will keep Jack Eichel happy. But I think Buffalo is unfortunately a little screwed over by the fact that they're not in the Atlantic Division anymore. I think this division is tougher than that old one was. I think they may have had a chance in that old division, but I think the fact that they didn't address their goaltending situation is going to cost them. Though I am excited to see if Dylan Cousins and Jack Quinn play on the team this year and make an immediate impact. Next, we got New York Rangers. They did lose Lundqvist. I'm excited to see Ilya Shesterkin play a full season, but I just don't see them ahead of any of these other teams. It's a tough division. And Panarin, as great as he is, it would be difficult to have another season as good as that. I think he'll still have a good year, but last season was really exceptional. And in last place, I have New Jersey. This is a straight-up rebuild. I like that they brought in Corey Crawford, but they're rebuilding, and there's no way around it. We could see Kyle Palmieri traded this year as well. Okay, so now that is it for the East Division. We're on to the Central Division, what I think is the easiest division this year. So, Randy, what are your thoughts on the Central Division? What are your picks?
Obviously, number one, I think both of us will have it. It's no doubt Tampa Bay. They just have such a stacked team, Stamkos, Kucherov. You think of even their depth players like Tyler Johnson. It's just a no-brainer for me. I have Tampa at number one. Number two, I think I have Carolina. They have a good young team with Sebastian and Svechnikov, all those guys. They've been playing really well, and I can see them maybe even going uh, pretty far in the playoffs. Number three, I Dallas. You know, them making the finals this year. Like adding depth a couple of years ago with Pavelski was really good with them. And then number four, I think I have Florida making the playoffs. It's gonna be a pretty, it's not the strongest division, but that's kind of why I have Florida making the playoffs here. In any other division, I wouldn't really see Florida as a playoff contender, but in this one, I think that they might have a chance. Um, Number five, I have Columbus. They've been a pretty good team, making it to the playoffs. Remember back in the playoff series where they knocked out the number one Tampa Bay a couple years ago. That was pretty crazy. And I still see a pretty decent team, but I don't think that they're going to make the playoffs this year. Number five, I have Nashville. Um, Nashville. I don't see them anywhere really close to a playoff spot. I'm not seeing the depth of the talent to make it to the playoffs here. And then number six, I have Chicago. You know, they've always, the dynasty with Taves and Kane is over. They're kind of low key in a rebuild right now, but they are getting players like Kirby Doc, which is very promising for them in the future. So I'd like to see how that pans out. And then number seven, no doubt, I have. Or wait, number seven, I have. Oh wait, number eight, I have Detroit. It's just they are in full rebuild. It's not looking good for Detroit right now. Um, I'd like to see how they are in the future, but right now they're just in full rebuild mode. It's not looking good for them. I have them at the bottom of the division.
Yeah, so my rankings pretty similar, but a few key differences. So in first place, obviously we have Tampa. You know, again, there's not much to say about this. They're going to be elite again. If Stamkos is healthy for the full season, I don't know if he will or won't be. But if he's healthy again, that will be great because they missed him the whole playoffs except for that one game in the Cup final. But Tampa's another elite team. And you mentioned Tyler Johnson. That situation with him has never been resolved. He cleared waivers. We thought he was going to go somewhere. It never happened. So will he be stuck in the minors? I mean, he's way too good for that. We don't know what's going to happen with him, but they're going to have to figure it out. But GM Julian Brisebois is doing a great job of re-signing everyone, continuing on Yzerman's legacy there. So I think Tampa is the easy number one. Number two, I have Dallas. I think Dallas is going to take a step back from where they were last year, where they were in the Cup final. But because I think this is the easiest division in the NHL, I think that they're going to end up barely squeaking out the second spot. I really think that Pavelski, while he had a great playoffs, I think he's inevitably going to continue regressing as he gets older. So I have Dallas in second, but don't expect much from them in the playoffs. Third place, I have Carolina, a very exciting team, a team on the rise. It looked like last year they might be able to take that next step after they really easily dispatched of the Rangers, but they were embarrassed by Boston in the playoffs, and for that reason, I can't put them ahead of Dallas. Fourth place, I have Nashville. This is our first major disagreement. I think Nashville is going to squeak in. I think Duchesne had a disappointing season last year. I think Johansson had a disappointing season last year, and they were embarrassed in the play-in round by the Coyotes. But I think Nashville is going to respond, and because this division is so weak, I do see them getting in. Next, in fifth place, I have Columbus Blue Jackets. I think Tortorella is right up there with Trotz as one of the best coaches in the league. I just don't think they have that star power to get them to the next level. And I think Pierre-Luc Dubois is an emerging star, but he's not quite there yet. And I think Seth Jones is an elite defenseman, but I don't think that's enough. They've got a great 1-2 punch in net with Jonas Korpisalo and Elvis Merzlikins, but I don't think they're quite ready to take that next step and make the playoffs. So I have them just missing. And then we have Florida. I think Florida is in big trouble. I will talk more about the Duclair signing this offseason. I think they've made some good signings, but what did they lose? They lose Yevgeny Dadonov and Mike Hoffman. Mike Hoffman hasn't signed yet. It doesn't look like he's coming back. My prediction would change if he did come back, but I don't think Florida can make up for that lost offensive firepower. And it seems like, they have a great coach. They have talent. Something's wrong in that organization. I don't know what it is. Maybe the owner just needs to sell the team because I don't see a solution in sight. This is really tough for Panthers fans because at best, I think they barely squeak into the playoffs. They've been rebuilding for long enough where they should be cup contenders by now. Now, in 7th place, I have Chicago. They actually wrote a letter to their season ticket holders, similarly to what the Rangers did a couple years back, saying that we're rebuilding. Kane and Taves are very unhappy with the rebuild. Maybe they'll request a trade. I don't know, but they're very unhappy. The Hawks have basically no solution in net. I mean, you've got Colin Delia or Malcolm Subban. I mean, that's a huge downgrade from Leonard and Crawford, which is one of, if not the best tandems in net last year, and now they've lost both of them. So, again, like you said, though, Kirby Dach, he's playing in the World Juniors. He's probably the future of this team. Kane and Taves are a little past their prime or about to be past their prime. And then in last place, we have Detroit, a complete mess of an organization. Finished last by a mile last year and still got the 4th overall pick, not even a top 3 pick. And they've had a pretty abysmal record in drafting. I don't know about Moritz Seider. He hasn't seemed to be working out. They notably missed on Quinn Hughes. They let him slide to Vancouver, and a lot of their fans were hoping that the Michigan player would play for them, and he did not. So Detroit, an absolute gong show of an organization, and it does not look good if you're a Red Wings fan. Okay, finally, we have the West Division. I think this is one of the toughest divisions in the NHL. It was a lot tougher until they moved Minnesota into the division, so we'll see where they fall in the rankings. So, Randy, what are your thoughts on the West?
Yeah, this is really sad for me, obviously, being a San Jose Sharks fan. But it really hurts for me to say, but I think I have Vegas at number 1 here. They've just been such a dominant team. They just couldn't get it done in the playoffs, but they've been very good in the regular season. I see Vegas going number 1. Number 2, I have Colorado, such a good young team. You have stars like Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen. That's a very scary team looking forward into the future. I think that they have a chance at a cup within the next 2 to 3 years. I wouldn't be surprised. Number 3, obviously we have St. Louis. They were the Stanley Cup champions the year prior to last year. They still have the talent, Tarasenko. But the thing is, they lose Pietrangelo. That's going to be a huge loss for them. It really sucks for them. But then bringing in Torrey Krug, I don't see it as much of a solution, but it does kind of, put a bandage on the loss. Let's see. And then number 4, I think I have Arizona going number 4. This is a really, really weak division, or this is a really weak division when it comes to the bottom, about 4 teams. So I think I have Arizona squeaking out the playoff spot against Minnesota. Arizona is, with losing, Taylor Hall, it's not going to be good for them. But I do still see them making it over Minnesota. Minnesota has been pretty irrelevant for a while now. Minnesota at number 5, though. They've just been such an irrelevant team to me. It's just not been very great for Minnesota. At number 6, I'm very hopeful that the Sharks can pull it off to make it at least the top of the bottom 3. Losing Jumbo Joe, I mean, he has been regressing a lot. I'll give you that, but it still hurts losing a veteran presence like that. Joe Thornton's been a huge part of this organization, if not probably the face of the organization for for years now. But we still have Logan Pitcher. Um, we just re-signed Patty Marlowe again. So that's gonna maybe hype up the boys, and hopefully we'll get the top of the bottom three, which is hard for me to say being a San Jose fan, but it's about as much as I'm gonna expect from us this year. Number 7, I have Anaheim. The California teams have really, really, really been struggling these last couple of years. It's kind of sad to see, but I don't see much out of Anaheim. Their core is really starting to age. Getzlaff is getting old. They lost Corey Perry to Dallas. I do see like guys like Kasha that could maybe spark up the organization. He could be a future in the organization. And then last I have LA. Same thing with them. Kopitar is getting old. He's still a great player. Don't get me wrong, but he's getting old. And guys like let's see, who else is there that could spark up the organization. I can't really see much for LA being like this year. It's going to be tough for California teams this year. So I have them in the bottom 3.
Okay, so again, pretty similar rankings, but a few notable disagreements. So in first place, I have Vegas, and I think Vegas is going to be, if you were going to call, I guess there is no Western Conference, but I think Vegas is going to be one of the top 2 teams in the league this year. I mean, they were already an elite team. They absolutely dominated the playoffs, and they surprisingly went out to Dallas in 5, but I'm not worried if I'm a Vegas fan. I think with the same team this year as they had last year, they could be elite. And now to bring in Alex Pietrangelo, they do lose Nate Schmidt and Paul Stastny, but to bring in Pietrangelo, an elite defenseman, to an already elite team, I think that's going to really push them over the top. So Vegas, I have them number 1 by a lot. I think they're going to win this division in a very convincing fashion. And I think Peter DeBoer has really proved that the Sharks he was not the problem with the Sharks, clearly, because he's done very well with Vegas, and he's, I think, going to take them to heights further than Gallant did, maybe even a Stanley Cup very soon. Second place, I have St. Louis. Now, St. Louis had a very disappointing loss to Vancouver in the playoffs, and why did they lose? Well, I think Jordan Binnington was part of the reason. I thought he had a very bad playoffs, and they went with Allen part of the way through. I thought Allen was the better goalie, and Allen had one bad game, and they went back to Binnington. I think they should have stuck with Jake Allen. So I think goaltending might be an issue for them, but I think St. Louis is still going to end up finishing second. They were the hottest team, or one of the hottest teams in the league going into the shutdown with COVID, and coming out of the shutdown, they just weren't the same team. But I think in a full uninterrupted season, or even a shortened uninterrupted season, St. Louis is going to do well, finish second. Next up, we got Colorado. I think Colorado is going to be a very good team this year. They had so many injuries in the playoffs that caused them to lose to Dallas, but I still don't think that they're going to be first in the division. I just don't think. A lot of people are saying they're cup contenders, they're going to win the cup. I just don't see it for them yet. I doubted them last year. I'm not going to doubt them as much as I doubted them last year, but I still don't see them as top of the division. Now, fourth place, and I want to preface this by saying I think the top 3 in this division are miles better than the rest of the division. Fourth place, I have San Jose. I think the Sharks are going to squeak in to the 4th playoff spot. Now, let me explain why. So, we did not address goaltending this offseason. We brought in Dubnyk. I don't think he's going to be much better than our 2 current goalies, but I just don't see how the team could get much worse than last year. I think in a really weak division like this, they are going to improve. Not necessarily because we're a great team, San Jose, but because I don't think any of the teams below us are better than us. And that includes Arizona, who I have at number 5. Now, I think Arizona is really in a bad place right now. I know Phil Kessel loves his coach. That was the reason he came to Arizona, because he loved his coach so much, Rick Tocchet. But I don't think he's been good for Phil or the team. Phil's offense completely declined when he came to Arizona. Taylor Hall's offense completely declined when he came to Arizona. And the Coyotes gave up a king's ransom for Taylor Hall. Now he's gone. They were trying to move off Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Now he's gone. So I just don't see how Arizona finishes ahead of San Jose or makes the playoffs. I just don't see it. So if you're a Coyotes fan, this is tough, but I just don't see how they're going to improve. Their best strength is their goaltenders. They have two elite goaltenders in Darcy Kemper and Antti Raanta. I would have loved to see them trade one of them so that they could bring in more assets to be a more balanced team, but they didn't do that. So that's why I have them where they are. And of course, they had that whole scandal with the prospects where they were fined picks. So the whole organization is a huge disaster. That's why I have Arizona at 5. Next, we got Minnesota. I thought Minnesota, they weren't sure if they were rebuilding or not rebuilding when Bill Guerin came in as the GM, but now it's pretty clear that they are rebuilding. They moved off Dubnyk. They don't really have a goaltending solution. Galchenyuk is gone. Eric Stahl gone. So I don't know if I could see Minnesota doing any better than this. I think they're going to continue to be mediocre, miss the playoffs. Hopefully, if you're a Minnesota fan, you should be rooting for this team to lose because they need to get some high draft picks. Next up in second last, I have the LA Kings. Now, the LA Kings did finish the season on I believe it was 7 or 8 game winning streak. So they, seem to be finally buying into Todd McClellan's system. I still think he's a good coach. I know my co-host who's not here, he's an Oilers fan. He might disagree, but I think McClellan is a pretty good host and a pretty good coach. And I think the Kings, the addition of Quinton Byfield with the second overall pick, I think that'll be good. Finally, we got Anaheim. I just think that LA is going to finish a little ahead of them. Anaheim's got John Gibson in net. Not much else. I mean, Cam Fowler's pretty good. Trevor Zegras, if he makes his debut this year, that could be exciting. But I just don't see them finishing ahead of LA. And I have them last in the West. Okay, so that is the prediction segment of this show. So let us know in the comments what your predictions are for the season. And I think we have a pretty good chance of being accurate. Of course, this is going to be the most unpredictable season ever, but it's a shortened season, so anything could happen. But I think that we had some pretty solid picks. And Shaedon, even though he was unable to join us now, he will share his picks in the next episode. Okay, so next we're going to be moving on to the World Junior Championships. This year it's going to be a little different. It's going to be hosted in Edmonton in a bubble. The teams actually arrived, I believe, over a month ago. So they've been training, they've been getting ready, and this is going to be very exciting. It kicks off with Team USA versus Team Russia on Christmas Day. Or that's not the first game, but that's the first one on TV here. So we'll preview that. We're not going to get too in-depth on it because we don't really follow juniors as much. So we know some of the players, but not all of them. We're just going to give our pick on who's going to win it, and then we're going to move on to the new player signing. So, Randy, who do you think is going to win the World Juniors this year?
As much as I hate to say it, I have to give it to Canada. They just have such a stacked roster. It's really insane to just look at the roster. I believe they have 20 of the 22 on the roster right now are all first round picks. It's just absolutely insane. Just all of the talent that they have in the team. I don't see them going anywhere less than a gold medal this year, especially with guys like Cousins, Doc. It's Doc has already established himself as a very good NHL player. I don't think it's going to be fair for any other team this year. But number 2, I do have the U.S. It's really not looking good for us in that gold medal game, but I do think that the U.S. can squeak it out into the silver medal game. Number 3, I have Sweden, and then in that game, I have Sweden playing against Russia. So we'll see how that goes. I do think that Russia will probably win in that bronze medal game. But it's gonna be a toss up. I feel like.
Yeah, Russia had that very crushing loss to Canada in the finals last year. A lot of people thought that they were finally going to win the World Juniors last year, but they lost in that tournament in the Czech Republic against Canada. Yeah, I didn't have the full prediction like that. I just had my winner, so I also agree that Canada is going to win. And, it's unfortunate if you're an American like we are because Canada got lucky. The Sabres allowed Dylan Cousins to go. The Hawks allowed Kirby Dach to go. But Americans didn't get so lucky. Quinn Hughes, Jack Hughes were not allowed to go attend the tournament and play. So the U.S. is going to, I think, just talent-wise, not be good enough. So that's why I think they're going to lose out. I'm excited to see Cole Caulfield and Spencer Knight, the goaltender, the Panthers prospect, play for the U.S., but I do have Canada winning it again on home ice. And that's the World Junior Championships, again, starting on Christmas Day on NHL Network. We're all very excited for that. And it'll be the first year that the World Junior Championships will be happening before the NHL season, because one of the reasons I hadn't gone, I always watched the World Juniors, but I wasn't super into it because there was usually the NHL on at the same time, and I would generally pick the NHL unless it was like a playoff round. But now that this is all going to be happening before the NHL season starts, I'm going to be watching pretty much every game. So I'm very excited for that. Okay, now we have the one recent transaction, and this was actually kind of a big one. Anthony Duclair taking a bet on himself, signing a 1-year, $1.7 million contract with the Florida Panthers. So this is a pretty big deal if you're Duclair, because if you guys don't remember, he was actually negotiating for himself. He said he didn't need an agent. He could negotiate a contract himself. The Senators offered him a 3-year contract, $5 million per year. He turned it down, and now he takes a much smaller sum, but over only 1 year. So he's betting on himself. So, Randy, what do you think about this deal for the Panthers and for Duclair?
I absolutely love this deal for the Panthers. It's gonna bring some scoring, but the thing is, in my mind, I don't see when I think of Duclair, I don't think of someone that's super consistent. He hasn't always been consistent. His totals seem to spike and then drop for a couple of years and then spike. So like early in his career, it's kind of been he had that 140-point season, and then he for a couple of years he only had a couple like 20-point seasons, and then last year he kind of spiked up to that 40-point season. So I don't really see him as the most consistent player, but I do think that he would be a good top 6 forward for them. And yeah, I love this deal for the Panthers and Duclair. If he does well, I think that this could really benefit him, but it's kind of a make or break for him. He either does very well and gets a big contract for next year wherever he wants to go, or he kind of snubs himself and doesn't get the greatest contract for next year after passing up what seems like a pretty good deal with the Ottawa Senators. Obviously, the Senators not being a cup contender at all, or even really a playoff contender in my mind, but it was a good amount of money for the talent that he had. So we're going to see how this goes for him. I wish him the best, but I think that this is a great deal for both of them.
Yeah, it's interesting. So Duclair had 23 goals and 17 assists in 66 games. So he was definitely on pace for 30 goals, and he could have had a 30-goal season possibly. He was definitely up there. So if he gets another 30-goal season, well, he probably won't because it's 56 games, but if he gets a similar goals per game next season, he is setting himself up for a big deal. It's interesting. This is going to be, if I'm counting right, his sixth team that he's been on. He started his career with the Rangers. A lot of people don't know this, but then to Arizona, then Chicago, then Columbus, then Ottawa. Some people were actually like wondering, why did he choose the Panthers here? They are a pretty, mediocre team. If you're going to sign a prove-it deal, wouldn't you want to go to a cup contender? The only thing I can think of is he did play 23 games with the Chicago Blackhawks in 17-18 under coach Joel Quenneville. So it could be that he really liked Coach Quenneville and wanted to play for him for a year. And, we saw a similar situation with Hall. That's the reason he signed in Buffalo. He wanted to play for Ralph Krueger. So that could be why. But again, if you're a Panthers fan, this is an excellent deal, bringing in Duclair for really cheap. But Panthers fans, this does have to be overshadowed by the fact that this is probably acknowledgement that Hoffman is not coming back. So, you know, you can look at it in a positive light or a negative light. But on its own, this is a great deal for the Panthers. And Duclair, if he does well, he will get paid. If he doesn't do well, then he might think he's not very smart for turning down that deal. Okay, that is that contract. And we are getting close to the end of this podcast. We're going to wrap it up by talking about the retro reverse jerseys. Basically, the reason I think that the NHL did these is because of revenue. They're losing a lot of revenue. That's the reason that they've also agreed to allow advertisements on the helmets. So we're going to be looking sort of like a European league. I don't know if that's going to be this year or next year. But it is exciting because we're going to see teams with a lot of jerseys. The Sharks are actually going to have 5 jerseys this year because they have their teal and white jerseys, then they have their stealth mode jersey, then they have their gray retro reverse jersey, and then this year they have their 30th anniversary teal old school jersey. But anyway, we're going to have the link to the retro reverse jerseys in the description, so if you don't know what we're talking about when we're ranking them, you can check it out and look at them. But Randy, what are your 3 favorite retro reverse jerseys, and then what's one jersey you don't like?
Okay, so obviously I'm a little bit biased with my jerseys. I love that Sharks jersey, the gray. It's just a little bit different. It's something that I kind of look for in jerseys. I like to see like different kind of things. That Caps jersey also is very, very nice. I love how they implemented that eagle. Coming back to that with it's just such a nice jersey. And then I think my third favorite is it's probably going to be the Phoenix jersey. That's just such a classic look. I love the purple. I also love the purple on the Kings jersey. The purple jerseys to me are just really, really nice looking jerseys. So those are probably my top 3. And then my least favorite has to be the Detroit Wings practice jersey. It's they put absolutely zero effort into it. It literally looks like one of the practice jerseys. If you literally look up an NHL practice jersey, that's what it looks like they're going to be playing in. So I don't know what the move was for the Detroit Red Wings jerseys. I personally, if I was a Detroit Red Wings fan, I would not even think about buying it. It has zero effort to it. I don't like it at all.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm gonna pick a different jersey for my least favorite because you basically said all that's need to be said about that jersey. Just a big missed opportunity as well. They could have gone with that old school D logo on their jersey and they didn't. Okay, so for my top 3 retro reverse jerseys, I gotta go number 1 with the Arizona Coyotes jersey. At first, I didn't like it. I'm not a super big fan of the bottom of the jersey with the cactus and stuff. It looks a little tacky, but I just love the purple color and I love the logo. I like the head, I'm not a big fan of the Kachina jerseys where they have the whole coyote, but where it's just the old school head. I really like that. So that's my first favorite. My second favorite, I gotta go with the Ottawa Senators. I really just love the red and black color scheme. I'm not a big fan of the fact that they switched to the 2D Sen, but this one looks really sharp. And I don't like their black one, but I do like this one a lot. And then after that one, it was kind of tough, but I had to go with the Avalanche Quebec Nordiques jersey. I just think it looks really cool in the Avs colors, so that's what I went with. For my least favorite, I have to go with, well, besides the Red Wings one, the Minnesota Wild one. And when I first saw it, I thought it was kind of nice looking because it was the Minnesota North Stars colors. But everyone in the comments of the post I saw it on was saying the Subway jersey. And once they said it, I couldn't unsee it. They have the exact color scheme of Subway sandwiches. And once someone pointed it out, I couldn't unsee it. So I got to go with that as my least favorite jersey, the Subway Minnesota Wild. So those are the the retro reverse jerseys. I don't think I'm going to get a Sharks one because honestly, I'm not a big fan of gray jerseys. So I don't think I'm going to pick up one of those. But I do think that these are pretty good jerseys, and they're a nice way for the league to increase revenue since they will have no ticket sales for at least the beginning of the year. Okay, and that will do it for the podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed. We're approaching on 45 minutes, so pretty good length for this one. And next time, Shaedon will be back, and hopefully the season will have started. I'm not sure. We might do another one before the season starts, depending on what news happens. Maybe Mike Hoffman signs, and if there's enough other news, we'll do a show. But otherwise, the season is starting very soon in less than a month, so I hope you guys are excited for that, and I hope you enjoyed. In the description, we have the link to the retro reverse jersey, so check that out if you're curious as to what we were talking about in this last segment. Thank you to Randy for filling in today. Did a great job, and we'll see you next time.